a masked figure confronts the terrified woman, asking why she hesitates to become his wife and if fear has finally gripped her after coming this far. Trembling in fear, she frantically questions why she is fated to marry this person and what purpose this union serves. In the morning light, the man dismisses May after her purification duties, signaling the end of her task in the cold water. Priest Kikuya reminds her that the dragon god watches her every move and instructs her to prepare the shrine for the upcoming festival rehearsal. Tamaki scolds May for her sluggishness, demanding she hurry up and change so they can proceed with their duties. She asserts her dominance by declaring she will perform the Kagura dance later, having already handled the sacred prayers herself. Tamaki mocks May for not memorizing the prayers, reminding her that Tamaki is the one performing the real ceremony in 3 days and warning her not to be an embarrassment. Sneering, Tamaki tells May to be grateful she gets to pretend to be the dragon god's priestess for a while, as the chosen sister is kind enough to let her fill in. May silently endures the insults, her thoughts turning to the dragon god that dwells on their isolated island. She reflects on their family history, noting they were born here and blessed by the dragon god's protection from the very beginning. In this country, those of the dragon god's lineage are revered as the most noble, carrying the blood of gods and spirits. However, only one sister is chosen by the dragon to cleanse impurities. The elder is loved while the younger is condemned to a tragic fate. The snake priestess is destined to accumulate impurity and harbor darkness, bound to the earth like a cursed snake while yearning for the sky until she brings ruin. Tamaki grabs May's hair, hissing that having a snake like her as a twin makes her sick, loathing the fate assigned to them. She curses their dead father for being irresponsible and not killing May at birth, rejecting his belief that children are innocent. Tamaki gloats that on her 16th birthday she will officially become the priestess and banish May, planning to leave the pathetic island for a luxurious life in Tokyo. May internally resolves that she stays on the island by choice, acknowledging she was likely spared only by her father's initial kindness. With quiet determination, she vows to gladly take her sister's place and fulfill the duties abandoned by her twin. In a memory, their mother rushes May to get ready while Tamaki vainly asks about her new red makeup, highlighting the disparity in their treatment. May recalls her pride in being born on Kaminaji Island, the land of the dragon god, and refuses to give up on her home. Villagers cheerfully greet the twins after training, unable to tell them apart, as May cherishes the beautiful and lively island life she loves. But everything changed the day their father fell from a cliff and died, shattering their protected world. From that moment on, May's life was never the same as the village's treatment of her shifted drastically. She learned the brutal truth that only the older sister could be the priestess, and she was forced into tattered clothes to clearly mark her as different. The villagers scorned her father's foolish belief that the younger twin wasn't cursed, relieved they could finally distinguish the noble twin from the cursed one. May realized she had only been allowed to live due to her father's love, but deep down he knew there could be only one dragon god's priestess. Despite the crushing reality, a voice of encouragement pushed her to keep going, calling her amazing. Around this time, the true dragon priestess abandoned her duties, leaving the training unattended. Tamaki complains that training is just standing in cold water all day and refuses to continue, calling it awful. May furiously scolds her sister, insisting they must gather divine power to protect the island, but Tamaki shuts her down. A scream pierces the air as Tamaki violently throws the wooden water bucket. Tamaki demands that May pretend to be her and do the training instead, claiming she will be chosen regardless and ordering May to tell the priest she is May. When Priest Kikuya asks the remaining girl where Tamaki is, May reports that her sister considers training pointless since she is destined to be the snake priestess anyway. Kikuya closes his eyes in silent resignation, understanding the deception without a word. Accepting the situation, he decides to mentor May, allowing her to continue the training in her sister's stead. Kikuya reveals that before they were born he and their father debated the legends of the dragon and snake, and he taught May everything from literature to etiquette. He imparts a crucial lesson: gods only give trials, but results are shaped by humans, so there is no such thing as unchangeable fate. Kikuya praises May's beautiful chanting, and she continues her rigorous training as the dragon god's priestess, defying her supposed destiny. A close-up reveals Kikuya's intense, calculating gaze as the day of reckoning approaches. With only 3 days until the divine revelation, Kikuya warns May to watch for changes and flee to the sea if anything happens, before suddenly calling out, "Tamaki." May freezes in shock, wondering if the priest saw through her disguise and addressed her as he before she rushes off to change. Shaking off the confusion, she focuses on her duty to bring the ceremonial robes to her sister before the Kagura dance begins. A sudden, horrifying realization strikes her as she looks down at her arm, discovering a patch of reptilian scales spreading across her skin. Tamaki recoils in disgust, pointing out the gross, snake scales that have appeared on her twin's limb. Realizing the implication, Tamaki gleefully exclaims that she doesn't have to wait for the divine revelation to expose Mei, planning to tell everyone immediately. Tamaki sneers that the evidence is now obvious, declaring that the snake can be kicked off the island right this instant. Terrified of exile, Mei falls to her knees and begs her sister not to cast her out. She pleads desperately to be allowed to stay, at least until the divine revelation officially decides their fates. Tamaki bursts into cruel laughter, agreeing to keep the secret for now only if Mei promises to serve her with absolute obedience. Mocking Mei's earlier resolve, Tamaki calls her pathetic and revels in seeing her strong sister reduced to a groveling mess. With a final insult, Tamaki orders Mei to strip off the disgusting robes she was wearing. Haunted by the transformation, Mei recalls a past moment where she asked the priest if her sister was truly destined to become the snake, a question born from her desperate hope to escape that very fate herself. In her memory, the priest confirms the grim legend, stating that upon turning 16, the snake priestess will become a vengeful god and destroy the island. The priest offered no comfort in his silence, his expression unreadable as the weight of the prophecy hung in the air. However, he placed a hand on her head, urging her to never stop believing and to always do her very best regardless of fate. Back in the present, Mei screams internally, rejecting the cursed destiny that forces her to become a snake. Desperate for salvation, she prays to the dragon god to save her from this wretched transformation. Suddenly, she is pulled from her thoughts by Shinta, a local boy who spots her in the sea and fears she is drowning. Shinta asks why she is in the water instead of practicing for the festival, confusing her with the chosen priestess. Mei realizes she can only speak to the kind boy when she is pretending to be her sister, and she creates an excuse about purifying her heart in the cold water. She reflects on her foolish belief that a clear heart and diligent training would allow her to meet the dragon god, a hope now shattered. Shinta recoils in shock, noticing the scales spreading up her neck and realizing something is terribly wrong. Panicked by his discovery, Mei scrambles out of the water and flees, consumed by the fear of what she is becoming. She screams into the rain, agonizing over how she can possibly change her cursed fate. Her cry echoes helplessly against the looming shrine gates as time fast-forwards 3 days to the fateful moment. Mei wakes to a violent storm shaking the building, confused by the sudden and intense weather. Chaos erupts as the festival is cancelled and villagers evacuate, the celebration of the priestess's birthday ruined by the elements. The priest observes the tempest with grim realization, while Mei wonders if the dragon god's anger is directed at her presence. Mei touches her scaled face, fearing that this violent storm is the divine message promised on the 16th birthday. News breaks that Shinta has vanished, and panic sets in as the villagers begin to suspect the dragon god's wrath is due to the snake being among them. A villager spots Mei and screams in horror, identifying the scales and declaring her the cursed snake priestess. Hysteria takes over as they accuse her of summoning the vengeful snake god, and Mei realizes the scales have fully claimed her face. The mob turns on her, branding her a monster and demanding she leave the island immediately to save them all. Isolated and rejected, Mei stands alone in the pouring rain as the village she sought to protect turns its back on her. She walks through the deserted streets, the visible scales on her face marking her as an outcast to everyone she passes. Even the priest stands distant as she passes, her internal monologue revealing that her only wish was to stay on the island. She clenches her fists, the scales on her hands serving as a brutal reminder of the reality she cannot escape. Mei accepts the bitter truth that changing her fate was impossible, acknowledging she knew this deep down from the beginning. Tears mingle with the rain as she resigns herself to the tragic destiny assigned to the younger twin. With a final, stealing look, she confronts the end of her life as a human, her eyes reflecting a mix of sorrow and resolve. The cold rain lashes against Mei, sharpening her senses as she stands alone in the storm, her mind racing for a solution. She frantically checks her body and realizes she is still herself, refusing to accept the destiny of becoming a vengeful god while there is still hope. A small voice calling out, "Priestess?" breaks her focus, drawing her gaze to Shinta who stands precariously on the high railing of the sacred gate. Horror grips Mei as she recognizes the boy and notices the massive wooden structure groaning and cracking beneath his feet. She screams for Shinta to wait, warning him of the danger just as the beams begin to splinter and give way. The sacred gate shatters with a thunderous crash, burying the screaming boy in debris as he calls out for Tamaki in his final moment of sight. From the shadows, a masked stranger observes the chaos, remarking with amusement on the dragon god's nasty disposition for starting the trial upon his arrival. He watches the dust settle, deducing that this calamity is a test intended not only for the priestess but for him as well. Mei frantically digs through the wreckage and finds Shinta alive, asking if he is hurt while the stranger observes her desperation from a distance. Trapped beneath the heavy timber, Mei spots a small opening above and urgently asks Shinta if he can climb through the gap behind her. Seeing the boy tremble with terror, she apologizes for the frightening situation, trying to soothe him despite her own peril. She forces a reassuring smile and promises to follow right after him, urging him to climb quickly as Shinta bravely declares he isn't scared. As the boy escapes, Mei remains pinned in the darkness, laughing bitterly as she admits to herself that she has known the cruel truth for a long time. She realizes that her death is the solution everyone secretly desired, believing that her sacrifice would finally resolve the island's curse. Tears mix with the rain as she stops fighting, finding a strange peace in the thought that maybe it is finally okay to let this be the end. Her hand slips from the wood as she resigns herself to the void, whispering that she fought against fate and did her absolute best. Fool! A cold, sharp voice pierces through the roar of the rain, halting her surrender as the masked man looms above her. He glares down with piercing eyes, warning her that breaking her promise to follow the boy makes her no better than a liar and puts the child at risk. The stranger grips his mask, his intense presence dominating the scene as he demands she confront the weight of her own words. With a chilling intensity, he leans in and commands her not to think for a second that she can lie to him. Mei recalls a selfish wish from her past, her thoughts lingering on the memory of colored stones. She huddles in a cave, apologizing to Tamaki in her heart and admitting she only wanted the blue stone because they were twins. Mei promises the conflict was her fault, remembering the lesson that being twins doesn't mean they must like the same things. A realization strikes her as she thinks of her father, sensing that the stories she heard were not a lie. Mei mistakes the masked figure for her father or a demon, but he mocks her for thinking he looks old enough to be her dad. The man removes his disguise to reveal a one-eyed Hanya mask underneath, sighing at the situation. He displays terrifying power, unleashing a monstrous strength that shocks the onlookers as he clears the debris. Priest Kikuya and his men arrive, recognizing the man as Ranjiro-sama and noting his strength is on another level. Kikuya identifies him as a rare, 10, demon and expresses shock that he would intervene to this extent. Ranjiro approaches Mei and calls her the Dragon Priestess, but she stammers and denies the title. He points out the beautiful dragon scales on her skin, dismissing her claim that she is merely a snake. Mei stares in disbelief at her own arm, seeing the scales shimmering on her skin for the first time. Shocked by the transformation, Mei questions how this is possible while Ranjiro looks on. Ranjiro realizes his wounds have vanished and scoffs at the gods, calling the entire situation a farce. Tamaki furiously confronts Mei, demanding an explanation for why she is being called the dragon. The crowd erupts in confusion as they notice the dragon scales have appeared on Mei, confirming the impossible. Tamaki refuses to accept reality, screaming that it must be a mistake and branding Mei a snake girl. Kikuya orders Tamaki to step back and commands Mei to show her right hand to the priest. Mei holds out her hand, revealing the distinctive pattern of scales embedded in her skin. Kikuya identifies the mark as the deep blue threefold scales, confirming the legend. He declares without doubt that this is the Kaminaji dragon crest, proving Mei's status. Kikuya dismisses Tamaki with a cold acknowledgement, turning his full attention to the true priest. Tamaki screams in betrayal, insisting she was told the firstborn is the dragon and the younger the snake. Ranjiro explains that the dragon is simply a snake exalted to divine form, while Kikuya reveals their father re-examined the legend. Kikuya details the hypothesis that one must first take the form of a snake to become a dragon, a theory derived from old records. He concludes that birth order has nothing to do with who becomes the priestess, shattering Tamaki's worldview. Their father Akihiro bet on the possibility that his daughters could defy fate, though it was only a theory at the time. Kikuya asserts that the gods are arrogant beings who test humans, noting that no priestess has ever undergone such a transformation before. He condemns Tamaki for growing arrogant and neglecting her training, while she forced Mei to take her place in the rituals. The villagers turn on Tamaki, calling her a disgrace and a liar who deceived them all, while lamenting Mei's mistreatment. Tamaki stands frozen in humiliation as the villagers scoff at her pathetic fall from grace. The crowd's scorn intensifies, labeling her a deceiver who took the easy way out. Kikuya tells the devastated Tamaki to move aside, stating that Akihiro knew the younger twin would bear the greater burden. He comforts Mei by saying that Akihiro would be proud of her for enduring the trial. Kikuya reveals that the Dragon Pearl, a sacred treasure allowing the priestess to borrow the god's power, belongs to her. However, he notes that the pearl disappeared 6 years ago along with their father. Mei recalls that her father fell from a cliff into the sea and never returned. She remembers praying to the dragon god every day to bring him back or protect his soul. Kikuya shocks them by revealing that Akihiro is actually alive in Tokyo, prompting a reaction from the bored demon nearby. Ranjiro suddenly sits up, declaring he has had enough of entertaining this nonsense. Stunned by the revelation, the girl grabs the stranger's collar and demands to know why he claims her supposedly dead father is in Tokyo. The stranger notes her unexpected loudness while she violently shakes him, refusing to accept his words as a mere joke. He remarks that he previously dismissed her as a fool who blindly followed fate, implying he now sees a different fire in her. A look of relief crosses his face as he smiles, seemingly satisfied by her passionate reaction to the news. He clarifies that he knew Akihiro personally and assures her with a serious expression that he is not joking. Explaining his debt to her father, he reveals that sightings of Akihiro began in Tokyo a year ago, news he struggled to accept himself. The reality that her father is alive hits her with force, but she is immediately daunted by the sheer vastness of a city like Tokyo. The stranger suggests that if her father possesses the Dragon's Pearl, she should be able to sense its energy with her current abilities. A realization strikes her as she connects her own spiritual sensitivity to the possibility of tracking the artifact. He emphasizes that this is a task only she can accomplish, placing the burden of the search directly in her hands. Leaning in with a charismatic smirk, he extends an invitation for her to leave the island and come to Tokyo with him. She recoils in disbelief, questioning how she could possibly follow a man she just met to such a distant place. He counters her skepticism by declaring that the Kishin clan does not lie, prompting her to demand proof of his identity. Sitting confidently on the steps, he identifies himself as a servant of the Dark Demon King and promises he is speaking the truth. Addressing her as Tani, he swears once again that his offer is genuine. She screams, "Liar," and accuses him of mixing her and Mei up just yesterday, citing his sudden knowledge of her favorite color as suspicious. Her anger spills over as she shouts that her father doesn't care about her at all, revealing her deep-seated resentment. The outburst fades into sorrow as she recalls the last words she spoke to him, her eyes widening with a painful memory. Guilt consumes her as she remembers the night he fell into the sea, realizing she never got the chance to apologize. Tears stream down her face as she admits to herself that her father wasn't wrong, validating his choices. Though she has no physical proof, she accepts the truth in her heart that he is alive. The stranger extends a hand, acknowledging that asking for her trust is selfish but offering the path regardless. She reaches out and touches his hand, demanding that he take her to Tokyo with him. With a fierce glare, she warns him that if this is a trick, the dragon god's lightning will strike him down. He smiles with absolute confidence, asserting that he is safe because his father was never wrong. Gripping his hand tightly, she agrees to the deal, sealing her decision to leave the island. With burning determination, she vows to find her father no matter the cost. Dressed in her new Western attire, Mei steps out, prompting Ranjiro to remark that she looks like a completely different person. He teases her about the capital's fashion not looking bad on her, and she politely thanks him for preparing the clothing. Priest Kikuya approaches to bid them farewell, addressing the priestess with solemn respect before their departure. He instructs her to connect with the dragon god under any circumstances and expresses his hope for good news about Akihiro. Mei thanks the chief priest, who reassures her that the dragon god will surely respond to her even in a land without the sea. A flashback flickers of a young boy named Shinta calling out, asking if she is truly not coming back anymore. In the memory, she promises to return once she finds her father, asking him to trust that she isn't lying this time. With a gentle smile, she affirms her vow, leaving the boy with a hopeful hiss before the memory fades. The scene shifts to the present, where the villagers watch silently from the roadside as the group prepares to leave. They stand on the path leading across the water, the reality of leaving the island sinking in as the tide recedes. Ranjiro asks if this is her first time crossing, and she confirms the embarrassing truth as they face the open path. He notices her hesitation and asks if she intends to stop, but she denies it with quiet resolve. They walk along the submerged path that connects the island to the mainland, leaving their isolated world behind. A sleek black car waits for them on the other side, and the driver exclaims that the lady priestess is even more beautiful than he imagined. The driver, Hazuki, tries to make small talk about Ranjiro's forceful nature, but Ranjiro orders him to shut up and drive. As the car starts, Mei trembles violently, prompting Ranjiro to comment that he hasn't seen that reaction in a while. Looking out the window at the receding island, Ranjiro notes that the villagers were trying to apologize to her. He asks why she didn't accept their apology, suggesting it would be natural considering everything they did to her. Mei replies that holding a grudge against the islanders would be misguided, as she has no intention of blaming them. She explains that she simply tries not to let her inability to forgive turn into hatred, maintaining a delicate balance. Mei believes they were all merely deceived by a mistaken tradition, refusing to place the fault solely on the people. Ranjiro smirks, noting that it is only natural for humans to wish for a peaceful life regardless of the truth. However, Mei admits that when it comes to her sister, she cannot easily bring herself to say the words, "I forgive her." Ranjiro calls her a saint with a hint of irony, acknowledging the complexity of her feelings toward her twin. Mei stares ahead, confessing that drowning in hatred would probably be the easier path to take. Changing the subject, she asks Ranjiro since when he has been acquainted with the head priest. She presses him about the debt he owes her father and how he came to know the priest in the first place. Ranjiro ignores the question and reminds her that he told her to call him Ran, instead of using formal titles. Mei protests that he is the leader of the Kishin clan and deserves respect, but he calls her annoying for being so formal. He insists she drop the honorifics, pointing out that Ran is not a member of the Dragon God clan after all. A silence falls between them as Mei processes his demand, realizing the shift in their dynamic. Ranjiro leans in with a smirk, declaring that from now on he intends to call her name a lot. He says her name softly, testing the sound of it without the weight of titles or destiny attached. Mei flushes slightly and responds with a quiet, yes, accepting the new level of intimacy in their journey. Satisfied, Ranjiro grins and remarks that hearing her name a lot is a good thing. The car arrives in a foreign settlement, the architecture shifting to Western-style brick buildings and streetlights. Mei's eyes widen in wonder as she asks if they can stop to walk, fascinated by the gas lamps and new sights. Ranjiro complains that they have been making too many detours and warns that it will soon get dark before they reach Yokohama. Hazuki asks nervously what they will do when night falls, stating he is counting on Ranjiro to handle the situation. Ranjiro covers his face, muttering that when the darkness comes, he will have to do his job. Mei freezes as she recalls the ominous reputation of the Kishin clan, her hand trembling against the glass. A sudden chill grips her as she spots eerie, glowing eyes staring back from the darkness beyond the window. To her horror, formless shadows float openly through the town, their presence undeniable and unsettling. The stranger calmly explains these are sinners who escaped hell, dismissing the swarm as a mere nocturnal nuisance. He reveals that these spirits seek to steal living bodies, desperate to flee their punishment and return to the world. With a cold smile, he likens his clan to the Gokasatsu, the demons tasked with inflicting true suffering on sinners. He declares their duty is to crush these souls, standing as the executioners in place of the underworld's demons. Leaving her stunned, he steps out and orders her to stay inside the safety of the car. Shigetsu draws his blade and blocks her exit, warning that the car is the only sanctuary against the spirits. Panic erupts in the street as civilians flee from the invisible attackers, screaming in confusion. Perched on a high railing, the stranger scans the chaos for the humans responsible for opening the gate. His sharp gaze locks onto a target in the distance, identifying the source of the breach. Mei bangs on the window and shouts for Shigetsu, bravely demanding to join the fight. Shigetsu flatly rejects her plea, stating that only the rigorous training of the Kishin clan can destroy these creatures. A man shields a woman from the spirits, urging her to endure until Ranjiro destroys the gate. Ranjiro arrives in a blur of speed, commanding the civilians to move as he steps into the fray. With a single, fluid motion, he strikes the spirit, his power shattering its hold on the physical world. He mocks the dissipating entity, asking if the suffering of hell was truly too much to bear. As the spirit vanishes, he condemns it to taste death once more, his expression devoid of pity. Suddenly realizing he forgot his mask, he touches his exposed face in a moment of careless oversight. He turns his attention to the human culprits, asking if they are the companions of the one he seeks. Looming over them, he warns the man to control his lust, lest he summon the evil spirits again. His voice drops to a chilling threat, promising that there will not be a second chance for such a mistake. The woman cries out, "Ran," in recognition, causing him to flinch and offer a pained apology. She recoils in horror, screaming at him to stay away and lamenting that this tragedy happened. Bleeding and shaken, he bitterly recites that a priestess must not be tainted by the blood of sinners. He swiftly dons his mask to hide his face while May watches the heartbreaking exchange from the car. May ignores the danger and steps out, asking him if he truly believes such a minor thing matters. Her eyes blaze with intensity as she questions if a little blood could possibly tarnish the dragon god's power. He stares at her in stunned silence, his bloody hand lingering on his cheek as her words sink in. May unleashes her power to cleanse the area, her resolve shattering the barrier he tried to place between them. Tears well up in his eyes as he processes her unexpected acceptance, leaving both of them momentarily speechless. A genuine smile breaks through his shock, the weight of his self-loathing lifting for a fleeting second. He chuckles softly, remarking to Ricky that their partnership is going to be interesting. The group rests on the quiet street as the tension fades, the immediate danger finally resolved. Inside the moving car, May sits in silence while he wipes the remaining blood from his face, the atmosphere heavy. She stares at her own hand, marveling at the strength she displayed and the power of the dragon god she represents. A realization dawns on her that her role might be more than just ceremonial prayers for rain. As they arrive at their destination, she steels herself, resolving to fight alongside them in the battles to come. He suddenly breaks the silence, admitting he forgot to mention a crucial detail about their arrival. He instructs her to just play along, revealing he told his family a fabricated story about her presence. Servants bow as the car door opens, welcoming Ranjuru-sama back home. May freezes as they finish the greeting, referring to her as his bride, whom they have been waiting for. Birds soar over the imposing Western-style mansion of the Kishin clan, signaling the start of a new day in Tokyo. May wakes up slowly in an unfamiliar bed, disoriented by the luxurious surroundings. She bolts upright in a panic, realizing she is in a strange room and terrified that she is late for her morning duties. Reality sinks in as she remembers she is no longer on the island but at the Kishin estate in Tokyo to find her father. Shiho stomps down the hallway, yelling at the lazy clan head to wake up since it is almost noon. Ranjuru groans from beneath his covers, complaining that he just got home after 2 days and wants to sleep. Shiho tears the blankets off, scolding him for having no consideration when a lady has been waiting for him. May sits in the guest room with perfect, unwavering posture, surrounded by a serene aura despite the long wait. Ranjuru finally arrives and praises her impressive discipline, noting she has been sitting there for 2 hours without moving. May refuses to eat until he explains himself, but Ranjuru ignores her protest and orders breakfast for both of them. Her stomach betrays her with a loud growl, and Ranjuru smirks, noting that even a priestess cannot function on an empty stomach. As they eat, May demands to know where the ridiculous talk about her being his bride came from. Ranjuru casually lists the benefits of the union, claiming she wouldn't lack money and that he isn't bad-looking. He calls her his dear wife with a teasing grin, but Hazuki and Shiho watch awkwardly as May snaps that this isn't the issue. Furious, May accuses him of tricking her into coming to Tokyo, demanding the truth behind his schemes. Ranjuru's expression darkens as he reveals that the Kishin clan might be involved in what happened to her father 6 years ago. He explains that killing the head of the Dragon God clan would be a massive scandal that they are desperate to hide. The situation is dire, involving not just the murder but the theft of the clan's sacred treasure, warranting total eradication. May realizes they wanted to secure her as an ally to protect themselves before the truth of their involvement leaks out. Ranjuru admits that the culprit is likely someone inside this very estate, making everyone a suspect. He confesses that the story about their childhood promise was just a useful lie to get her here without suspicion. May watches him eat nonchalantly, noting with disdain how convenient his lies are. Determined to find the truth, she demands that he allow her to help with the investigation. Hazuki supports her, pointing out that since she might be the next target, they should handle the danger. May pleads with them, asking what the point of her coming to Tokyo was if she can't help find her father. She offers to act as bait to lure the killer out, but Ranjuru shuts her down with a sharp refusal. His eyes narrow dangerously as he commands that as long as she is in his estate, she will follow his orders. Mei bites her lip in frustration, forced to submit to his authority for the moment. Ranjiro suggests she take a few days to explore Tokyo with Shiho, treating her like a tourist. He relents slightly, allowing her to move freely in the estate but insisting she take a guard if she goes outside. Mei rejects his conditions with a cold, "No, thank you," pushing away the offer of a chaperone. She declares that she will act alone, refusing to be babysat while her father's fate remains unknown. Mei argues that she cannot trust him after he kidnapped her and constantly contradicts himself. Hazuki warns her that Tokyo is haunted by evil spirits in broad daylight, but she finishes her meal with resolve. She reveals that she can use her water to repel spirits, as it carries the same purifying effect as sacred water. Ranjiro cuts her off with a sharp command, telling her that is enough. He questions if she thinks she can imitate their strength, while she insists she is doing her best with what she has. Ranjiro warns the stubborn girl that she will regret her defiance someday. Mei meets his gaze with burning intensity, telling him that he underestimates her resolve. Shiho interrupts in shock, realizing Ranjiro implied the culprit used a secret technique known only to the Kishin clan. Mei asks for clarification on the death register, confirming it is a definitive record of the names and death dates of the deceased. The conversation continues in the quiet Rayon foyer, where the weight of the underworld's laws begins to settle on them. He explains that officials use the register to collect souls, but if the record is altered, the exact time of death vanishes. A chilling realization strikes Mei as he reveals that such a soul is denied the afterlife and is instead doomed to wander the earth. He admits that while Akihiro was sighted in Tokyo, there is a strong possibility he is merely a wandering spirit rather than a living man. Turning his back, he muses that while it would be good if her father were alive, she must prepare for the alternative. He confronts her directly, asking if she will continue her search knowing that her father might be nothing more than a ghost. With a piercing gaze, he questions if she possesses the necessary resolve to face such a heart-wrenching truth. Mei stares back in stunned silence, the horror of the possibility warring with her desperation. Realizing he brought her this far just to test her with this cruel reality, she trembles as a vase shatters on the floor nearby. Fury overtakes her and she lunges forward, grabbing him by the collar in a burst of raw, physical frustration. She glares up at him, her voice shaking with rage as she demands to know why he waited until now to tell her. Tears well in her eyes as she shouts that his method of testing her is incredibly unfair. Steeling herself, she warns him not to underestimate her, while he looks down with a satisfied expression, having expected this fire. She vows that whether her father is dead or alive, she will stand before him as the dragon priestess with absolutely no regrets. Trams rattle through the bustling streets of Tokyo, marking Mei's arrival in a world far removed from her quiet island home. Mei stands frozen in the sea of strangers, the overwhelming reality of the massive city crashing down on her. Disoriented, she stumbles and accidentally bumps into a passerby, stammering a quick apology. A wave of hopelessness hits her as she realizes she cannot sense the dragon god's presence in this concrete jungle. A sleazy man leers at her beauty, crudely asking how much she charges for a night. He boxes her in, arrogantly suggesting she should come to his house and become his third wife. Shiho intervenes with a glare, disgusted by the man's audacity and ready to teach him a lesson. She terrifies him by invoking the name of the purple demon, sending the coward fleeing in panic. Shiho warns Mei that standing still makes her a target, reminding her that peace here is often just an illusion. Noticing the bow Mei carries for protection, Shiho comments on the difficulty of hauling a weapon through the crowds. They hop into a rickshaw, Shiho cheering wildly as she orders the driver to go faster. Mei watches the city blur past, her eyes widening in awe at the exhilarating speed of modern life. She admits it is her first ride, noting that her island lacked such conveniences for the worshippers. Despite the vastness of the capital, Mei steels herself with the resolve to search every corner for her father. Shiho smiles and promises her support, but firmly insists that Mei must never wander the city alone. Shiho explains that gates are born from negative human emotions, acting as portals that attract evil spirits. She reveals that the Kishin clan's sacred duty is to close these gates and exorcise the intruders. Shiho adds a crucial detail: only Oni with numbers possess the power to seal a gate. These elite warriors are identified by the numbers in their names, a rarity even within the clan. Shiho confirms that her name changed from Meiho when she attained this rank, proving her status as the fourth. Mei eagerly asks if she can undergo the training, but Shiho shuts her down, citing Ranjiru's inevitable refusal. She warns that the training involves dying once and working in hell for years, a fate too dangerous for a human. Shiho gently reminds her that such power is impossible without demon blood, urging her to stay close for safety. Mei stares at her joyful companion, finally grasping the heavy truth that the people protecting her are actual demons. Shiho curses Ranjiru for his secrecy, annoyed that he hides inconvenient truths from their guest. Mei questions if Ranjiru ever truly knew her father, his cruel words casting doubt on his alleged debt. A piercing scream shatters the conversation, drawing their attention to a sudden commotion nearby. Panic erupts as evil spirits materialize in broad daylight, feeding on the dense human energy of Tokyo. Shiho screams for Mei to take cover inside a building while she rushes forward to engage the threat. Shiho dodges a massive strike, her movements blurring as she confronts the dark entity. A desperate woman cries out that the monster is hurting a child, pleading for the Kishin clan's help. Mei ignores the warning and focuses her spiritual energy, praying to the dragon god to form a water arrow. She unleashes the magical projectile, watching it fly toward the target with high hopes. To her horror, the wooden bow snaps under the strain of her power, leaving her defenseless. The situation worsens as more spirits manifest, surrounding the civilians and overwhelming the area. A second gate tears open from another direction, doubling the threat and trapping them. Just as despair sets in, Ranjiru steps into the fray and tosses a weapon to her, commanding her to use it. He explains that a normal bow cannot withstand her priestess power, drawing his own blade to fight. Mei stares at the exquisite bow in her hands, stunned that he would entrust her with such a weapon. Ranjiru challenges her resolve, asking if she is sure she won't regret stepping onto this battlefield. Mei grips the weapon with steel in her eyes, her resolve hardening as she prepares to face the darkness head-on. Ran sighs with a mix of exhaustion and admiration, muttering about what a hopeless yet impressive person she turned out to be. He shouts her name into the chaos, declaring his absolute belief in her as civilians flee the encroaching shadows. Praying to her father and the dragon god for strength, Mei draws the bowstring as mystical water energy coalesces around her arrow. With a thunderous release, she fires a beam of pure energy that tears through the air toward the looming threat. The arrow strikes true, scattering the restless spirits of the voiceless dead that had gathered in the darkness. Their wails echo through the street, sounding like the mournful howls of demons as they are purified. The energy continues to sweep through, drawn to the despair of those with nowhere left to turn. Black miasma explodes outward in a violent burst as the purification takes hold of the corrupted entity. The dark curse shatters off the victim, cleansing the malevolent force that had taken root within the host. As the dust settles on the quiet street, Mei turns to Ran and questions why he was in possession of such a significant item. She stares at the weapon in her hands, realizing with a start that this is unmistakably her father's bow. Ran explains that he was entrusted with the weapon, assuring her that her father intended to give it to her himself eventually. He warns her that while he won't lie, he will keep secrets to the death if necessary, asking if she can still trust him with that burden. Mei looks deep into his eyes, weighing his words against the trust she is beginning to build with him. She clenches her fist and agrees to his terms, accepting that some secrets may be necessary for their survival. However, she sets a firm condition, warning him that she will hit him as many times as it takes if he crosses the line. Ran flashes a charming, confident smirk, seemingly delighted by her spunk and agreeing that her terms sound perfect. He pats her head and teases her for being a wild lady, prompting Mei to snap back about why he sides with her father over a peer. Ran drops a bombshell with a casual smile, revealing that while his body is 19, his soul is actually that of a 119-year-old man. Mei freezes in absolute confusion, her brain short-circuiting as she tries to process the absurdity of his confession. A mysterious figure stands amidst blood and carnage, asking Ran why he seeks power so desperately. Ran smiles from behind his mask, unbothered by the question of whether his 100-year existence is truly enough. The voice commands him never to speak the name of the second coming of Shutendoji, fearing the demon's legacy. Resting with a bottle of sake among camellias, Ran declares that unlike his ancestor he is single-minded in his pursuit. A fleeting memory drifts by of a quiet walk in the snow, sharing an umbrella in a moment of peace. Ran wakes with a start, the nostalgic dream slipping away as he returns to the waking world. He realizes with a jolt that the comfortable pillow he was using is actually someone's lap. Mei sits patiently, asking if he is finally awake while he rests his head on her knees. She claims she was only meditating while waiting, but Ran teases that her lap is surprisingly comfortable. He jokes that she crawled over in her sleep like a devoted wife, prompting Mei to scold him for his drinking. When she threatens to tell Shiho, Ran recoils in genuine terror at the thought of the demon's wrath. Mei seizes the chance to demand the truth, confronting him about his claim of being a 119-year-old man. Ran deflects with a grin, asking if she is fascinated by him, but she insists on knowing her husband's secrets. She declares that even as a guest she must fulfill her role properly, demanding to understand his strange circumstances. Shiho and Shigetsu arrive to prepare the carriage, but Ran interrupts their plans with a dissatisfied look. A mischievous smirk plays on Ran's lips as he decides to change the day's itinerary. He announces that since she is so eager to play the wife, he will personally allow her to do just that. At a parlor, Ran orders her to eat the melting ice cream, leaving Mei confused about how this relates to her duty. Mei takes a bite and shivers at the cold sensation, experiencing the sweet treat for the first time. Ran reveals that Shiho was sulking because Mei prioritized finding her father over Shiho's attempts to show her trendy things. The realization hits Mei that Shiho actually wanted to make her happy, a kindness she hadn't recognized. She admits she kept refusing because she didn't want to rely on others, unaware of Shiho's genuine care. A somber thought strikes her as she wonders if anyone has ever cared for her like that before. Walking through the market in her mind, she realizes she never recognized such warmth in her past. Ran interrupts her thoughts by stating that married couples go on dates, declaring this outing to be one. He teases a blushing Mei, claiming that feeding her delicious things is a surprisingly enjoyable pastime. Leaning in close, Ran declares it would be a waste to let anyone else have the pleasure of treating her. He scoops up another spoonful of the cold treat, fully intent on continuing his task. Ran proclaims that from now on he will take care of these matters himself. Mei stares at him in stunned silence, her heart skipping a beat at his unexpected declaration. They arrive at a tailor shop where Ran laughs loudly, earning a swift scolding from Mei for his bad manners. As Ran apologizes to the shopkeeper, Mei realizes with horror that they are in a famous luxury boutique. The shopkeeper asks about the rumored lady, and Ran teases Mei for trembling like a country girl. Mei composes herself and bows politely, introducing herself as Iwamoto Tamaki, a bride in training. Ran watches her formal greeting with amusement, impressed by how smoothly she delivers the polite lie. The shopkeeper praises her manners as expected of the Kishin clan's bride, mentioning new arrivals for women. He points out her hair ribbon, noting the high quality but suggesting it wasn't intended for tying hair. Mei clutches the ribbon protectively, explaining it was a gift, while the shopkeeper suggests lace for a more noble look. She closes her eyes and firmly states that the ribbon is important to her, refusing to part with it. Ran interjects, insisting that as a clan leader's wife she must wear fine things, and asks which item he should buy. Ran leans in close and urges Tamaki to learn how to ask for things, causing her to flush and accuse him of teasing her for being a country girl again. He assures her that using him for her benefit won't bring bad luck, clarifying that she doesn't need to rely on others completely but should still accept help. Admitting that understanding feelings is difficult, Ran frames his generosity as a way of repaying her for playing the role of his wife. Tamaki attempts to stammer a response, but Ran cuts her off decisively and tells the shopkeeper they will take the expensive item. As they finalize the purchase, Tamaki surprises Ran by shyly asking for archery maintenance tools to replace her bow's grip. Ran wonders if he handled the situation well while Tamaki worries she was rude, but he reassures her that a high-end merchant wouldn't last if they got upset over such requests. Tamaki reflects on her behavior, realizing that ignoring kindness can be a form of arrogance and questioning her belief that living alone was the right path. Memories of the island surface as she wonders if she was simply too foolish to notice the people who actually cared for her back then. She decides that thinking this way makes it easier not to resent anyone, choosing to embrace this perspective even if she isn't entirely sure it's true. With a gentle smile, Tamaki asks Ran to teach her how to ask for things properly so she won't make the same mistake again. Ran covers his face with his hand to hide his reaction, gruffly commanding her never to say those words to another man. Peering through his fingers, he clarifies with intensity that she must not direct such a request to anyone but him. Taki stammers a confused agreement, taken aback by the sudden seriousness of his demand. Ran announces they have one more destination to visit just as Shigetsu arrives with the vehicle. A pale, reptilian eye peers out from the darkness, watching silently. The creature continues its unblinking observation from the shadows. A young man with a crow perched on his shoulder watches from a window, declaring he will finally get to meet our bride. The crow caws loudly as Tamaki steps out of the car and freezes when she recognizes the impressive building before her. A boy opens the heavy doors of the bank, smiling warmly and stating that he has been expecting her arrival. He formally greets Tamaki as the priestess of the dragon god, expressing his pleasure that they have finally met. With the crow still on his shoulder, he introduces himself as Sogo Ibaraki, the acting director of the bank, and bows politely. Tamaki is stunned to realize the young boy before her is the head representative. The small child greets Tamaki warmly, admitting he has been looking forward to meeting her. Ran immediately punches the boy in the face when he tries to kiss Tamaki's hand, eliciting a cry of pain. Tamaki is horrified by the violence while Ran scolds the boy for thinking his appearance excuses his behavior. Ran continues his lecture, warning the boy that he cannot get away with anything just because of how he looks. The boy, Sugo, ignores the scolding and invites them inside, revealing the location is a bank run by the Kishin clan. As they head to the second-floor office, Tamaki notes the lively atmosphere filled with madams drawn by the popular head representative. Ran mocks Sugo for looking 12 despite his position, and Sugo complains that serious conversations make his shoulders stiff. Sugo explains that time flows differently in hell, where one day in the human world corresponds to 10 years of training. Ran adds that because they leave their bodies behind and send only their souls, their physical and spiritual ages become misaligned. Tamaki realizes this explains why Ran previously claimed his spirit is 199 years old despite his youthful body. She understands now that his spirit has endured far more time than ordinary humans. When Tamaki asks if Lord Sugo is the same, Ran confirms that this disconnect is what it means to be an Oni. Sugo reveals he is a shadow user capable of manipulating shadows into animal spirits. He shocks Tamaki by admitting he attached one of his shadows to her for protection. A shadow snake suddenly manifests from Tamaki's back, leaving her frozen in terror. Sugo explains that these animal spirits act as his eyes and hands to gather information and are his reliable friends. As the snake moves around her, Sugo sincerely apologizes for his surveillance during the past events. Tamaki feels a wave of shame and regret, realizing she had been blinded by fake traditions. Sugo observes the snake coiling around her and muses that the dragon and snake share a familiarity, suggesting the spirit likes her. Tamaki stands silent and stunned as the reality of the shadow spirits sinks in. Sugo shifts to business, stating he called them to discuss the lack of any trace of Tamaki's father since her arrival in Tokyo. Ran listens intently as Tamaki acknowledges the grim situation with a somber understanding. Sugo reveals the sightings of her father gradually increased starting a year ago but stopped abruptly when she reached the city. He explains that all the sighting reports actually originated from the Kishin clan itself. Sugo questions if outsiders could have known the date of the divine oracle in advance, shocking Tamaki. He theorizes that Akihiro was used by the culprits to make his figure appear before them exactly 1 year prior to the oracle. The ultimate goal of this manipulation was to ensure Tamaki would be brought to Tokyo upon becoming the priestess. Ran realizes the full scope of the deception with a dark, knowing smile. Tamaki asks if this was a provocation to force Ran to bring her, and he notes the enemy only revealed themselves to the Kishin clan. A look of cold fury crosses Ran's face as he realizes he was the one being deceived. Ran is furious that the culprits dragged Tamaki and Akihiro into this conflict just to pick a fight with him. Sugo confirms the culprit is an insider because the family register was altered, pointing to a grudge within the clan. The tension is broken when a servant interrupts to inform Ranjiro that he has a phone call. Tamaki tries to apologize for the clan's betrayal, but Sugo sympathizes with the pain of suspecting one's own people. His expression turns ruthless as he vows that even an insider will face no mercy for their crimes. Sugo switches back to a friendly demeanor and asks Tamaki to share her story so they can pinpoint the facts. He asks her to recount the details of when her father went missing. Sugo acknowledges it is a painful memory while Tamaki hesitates to speak. Tamaki begins to reveal the truth, recalling a memory of her father standing before a building saying he did not know. Tamaki confides that she should have been nearby when her father fell into the sea and went missing, though she feels a lingering guilt over her absence. A shadow of distress crosses her face as she admits to having absolutely no memory of that tragic moment. Their conversation is violently interrupted by a piercing scream that tears through the quiet atmosphere of the bank. Panic erupts as people flee the corridor, screaming that an evil spirit has infiltrated the building. Massive tendrils of darkness explode into the lobby, thrashing wildly and terrorizing the scattering crowd. Sogo curses as he realizes the enemy brought a gate directly inside, while Tamaki watches the chaos unfold in horror. Through the swirling black mist and destruction, a figure calmly steps out from a doorway. The man reveals himself with a cold, stoic expression, standing motionless amidst the panic. Tamaki grips the railing, her eyes widening in disbelief as she gazes down at the figure below. Her voice trembles as she barely manages to whisper the word "father." Ran suddenly hurtles through the air with a flying kick, screaming at Tamaki not to resent him for what he is about to do. He slams a devastating punch into the man, sending the figure flying across the room with massive force. The impact crashes through the structure, creating a chaotic explosion of debris and shattered wood. Ran lands amidst the wreckage and roars the name Akihiro with furious intensity. The scene instantly shifts to the empty street outside, leaving Ran and Tamaki standing alone in stunned silence. Ran grits his teeth as he realizes Sogo's presence has vanished, and Tamaki confirms she can no longer sense anything either. A taunting voice echoes, declaring it is Ran's turn and claiming to have given the bow to Tamaki as promised. Ran seethes with rage in the empty street while Tamaki stands frozen, processing the sudden shift in reality. Tamaki wonders if the enemy provoked Ran solely to bring her to this specific place, questioning the logic of the trap. She stares at Ran's back with uncertainty, reminding herself that she is supposed to be nothing more than his pretend wife. Shadow beasts hiss and snarl in the darkness, their forms twisting with malicious intent as the confrontation begins. A desperate man screams at the bank director, blaming the cut loan for his factory's collapse and demanding that the boy take responsibility for his ruin. Ranjiro descends the stairs with cold indifference, exposing that the man squandered the money on gambling and opened a gate out of pathetic desperation. Dark tendrils swarm the man's feet as Ranjiro explains that his shadows are animals who suffered at human hands before death. Terror seizes the man as Ranjiro declares that his shadows will gladly devour a bad human, unleashing them to consume him. The shadows strike with brutal force, knocking the man off his feet in a swirl of chaotic energy. The giant shadow rabbit spits out the corrupted energy, and Ranjiro laughs while noting that gates simply do not taste good. Ranjiro stands over the defeated man, his expression shifting to suspicion as he realizes something about the situation is strange. He observes that Kurata was speaking and reacting to him, which defies the norm where opening a gate renders a person unconscious. Sugo questions if someone forced the gate open, though he immediately dismisses the thought as impossible. Ranjiro feels a deep unease, recalling that Akihiro only appears near those who open a gate and has only been seen by the Kishin clan. He apologizes to his shadow animals, sensing that something outside the clan's common knowledge is occurring and asking for their help with a new investigation. Back in the street, Tamaki turns to Ranjiro with a trembling voice, asking what they should do after she saw her father. Ranjiro presses her for details, asking pointedly if the figure she saw looked alive. Tamaki hesitates before admitting she only caught a glimpse from afar, but she is certain that what she saw was not an evil spirit. Realizing Shigetsu might have had a better view, they look for him, only for Sugo to note he should be waiting in the car. Shigetsu appears with a carefree laugh, apologizing for moving the car into the shade and napping while the others were occupied. He scratches his head in confusion, asking the stunned group if something happened while he was asleep. Sugo stares silently, his expression unreadable as the tension of the investigation lingers in the air. The sky darkens as the long day ends, leaving everyone exhausted by the revelations. Shiho welcomes Tamaki back enthusiastically, throwing her arms open in a cheerful greeting. She hugs Tamaki tightly, expressing relief that she is safe after hearing an evil spirit appeared at Ranjiro's place. Ranjiro speaks through the shadow snake, instructing Tamaki to report any memories via the creature, while Tamaki reels from the discovery that Sogo is Shiho's brother. He warns her strictly not to tell his sister, reminding Tamaki that she cannot trust anyone around her as the culprit remains unknown. Tamaki calculates the ages and realizes that if Sogo is truly 13, even his own sister Shiho cannot be ruled out as a suspect. Shiho argues childishly with Sogo about being the elder sister, while he dismisses her for thinking she is better just because she trained one day longer. Tamaki recalls Ranjiro's claim that their clan does not lie, realizing just how complicated the Kishin clan's internal dynamics truly are. Deciding to trust her own judgment, she resolves to forget the mystery for now and focus on the dinner awaiting her. The shadow snake remains hidden in her clothes, a silent reminder that the situation is far more complicated than it appears. Sugo reflects on the past, noting that life was much easier when he had decided to live alone. Tamaki quietly excuses herself as she enters Sugo's room, finding him deep in thought. He invites her in as she announces that she has brought his sake. Sugo asks what she is doing, and Tamaki politely apologizes for the intrusion as she kneels with the tray. He assumes she wants another explanation, but she clarifies that the maid sent her, adding that she has a question of her own. Tamaki admits she would have no reason to visit him otherwise, asking if he finds the situation strange. Sugo agrees with a cynical smile, noting that they aren't even a real couple. She pours the sake while Sugo remarks that a woman shouldn't visit a man's room at night in sleepwear, though he adds that is a separate issue. Sugo stares intently, stating that her attire isn't the real problem here. He looks away with a sigh, dismissing the thought with a weary whatever. He remarks that Tamaki is lucky, revealing that his soul is actually that of an old man. Ran asks if he mentioned something before, to which she replies that color talk doesn't work on him, though she earnestly admits she likes the color blue. He recalls how Akihiro once got lazy and bought identical beanbags for the twins, causing one to complain about wanting the blue one. Cutting through the small talk, Ran pierces her with a serious look and asks if she truly wants to know whether Akihiro is alive. She confesses that even a fleeting glimpse of him brought her joy, despite having believed for years that her father was dead. Steeling herself, she declares she won't be devastated like a child and is fully prepared for the possibility that he has been dead all along. Ran reminds her of Sogo's explanation about the numbered ones undergoing hellish training where their souls travel while their bodies remain behind. He reveals that the Kishin clan possesses a secret technique capable of keeping a body alive even when bereft of its soul. This forbidden art is the clan's most closely guarded secret, made possible only by their exceptionally resilient physical forms. Ran warns her that even if Akihiro underwent the procedure to keep his body alive, there is no guarantee he survived it unscathed. Realizing the depth of his implication, she understands that Ran hasn't completely given up on the possibility of her father being alive. Determined by this sliver of hope, she vows that if there is even the slightest chance, she must try to save him. Ran shifts the focus to the Dragon Pearl as the cause of their entanglement and states he has a question for her. With the image of a dragon looming, he asks if the rumor is true that the Dragon Pearl can grant any wish. The two lock eyes in a moment of silent, intense assessment. A subtle smile begins to curve on her lips. Speaking as a priestess, she offers a vague confirmation that the rumor is true to an extent, though she remains cautious about its potential for evil. She smiles knowingly, acknowledging that since lies are ineffective against him, she has little room to maneuver. She admits that while her duty is to keep the Dragon Clan's greatest secret, the situation has changed. Looking him in the eye, she declares that she has decided to place her trust in him. She explains that her change of heart comes from seeing how truly he cares about her father. Ran looks taken aback by her sudden candor and genuine smile. He bursts into laughter, amused by the confirmation that she hadn't actually trusted him until this very moment. His laughter fills the room as the tension between them dissolves. Changing the mood, he holds out a cup and reminds her that it is a priestess's duty to pour sacred sake during a wedding ceremony. She stares at him in wide-eyed shock at the sudden request. Ran dips his finger into the liquid, teasing her not to be so strict since he knows she doesn't drink alcohol. He looks at her with a captivating, mischievous gaze, water dripping from his hand. Asking her to let this slide, he playfully presses his wet finger against her lips for her to taste. The intimate gesture lingers as he lets her taste the liquid. As she reacts with a scowl, Ran casually licks his own finger with a smirk. Outside the mansion, she complains that it doesn't taste good, while Ran laughs and calls her a child. Legend speaks of the dragon god's priestess, whose release of the sacred pearl's power is said to grant all of humanity's wishes. Records of these divine women are scarce, their history obscured by the passage of time and the immense rarity of their power. A vision from the past reveals a priestess in action, wielding her spiritual energy with a focused intensity that few truly understood. Dark energy explodes in a chaotic surge, illustrating the dangerous and overwhelming forces the priestess must contend with in her duty. Back in the present, Sugo argues that accompanying Tamaki to the gate is the most logical course of action if her father is indeed appearing there. A tender silence falls between them, the weight of their shared mission drawing them closer in a moment of quiet understanding. Tamaki proudly displays her work to the group, announcing that the area is now completely clean and purified. She is praised for her efficiency as she moves to the next target, her powers likened to the blessing of Benzaiten herself. With a focused gesture, Tamaki unleashes her purification power, cleansing the corruption from the old building with a brilliant light. Sugo watches with a cool, detached gaze, warning the others not to let the praise go to Tamaki's head. An official from the shrine agency arrives, complaining loudly about the troublesome situation of the priestess being associated with the Kishin clan. He arrogantly demands that Tamaki bow her head properly, asserting the esteemed authority of the shrine agency over her. Sugo immediately challenges the man's attitude, asking if there is a problem with his own conduct while Tamaki identifies the visitor. The official ignores Sugo and tries to guilt Tamaki, mentioning her father and her status as a respected figure chosen by the dragon god. Sugo yawns dismissively, mocking the official for thinking Tamaki would seek refuge with a ruined family, like the Kishin clan. Tamaki's expression hardens, her patience wearing thin at the continuous insults directed towards her hosts. She declares that she is learning the Kishin clan's rituals as part of her bridal training, prompting the official to question the marriage. A tense silence hangs in the air as the official processes the claim, his face twisting with disbelief and suspicion. Sugo steps in with a smirk, teasing that since Tamaki cannot lie, he must lie for her, and asks if exorcism is part of bridal training. The official is struck speechless, stammering in shock at the absurdity of the situation and the boldness of their claims. Regaining his voice, he spits out his venom, declaring the Kishin clan to be the most detestable family in the entire country. An image of the city underscores the scope of the clan's alleged influence and the deep-seated prejudice held against them. He recounts the legend of Shuten Doji, branding the Kishin clan as corrupt offspring who might bear their fangs against the nation at any moment. Tamaki snaps, shouting that she won't sit and listen to his prejudice, asserting that this conflict has nothing to do with gender. She stands her ground, refusing to let the official stir up unnecessary conflict between the shrine office and the Kishin clan. With fiery conviction, she lectures him that the true duty of those who serve the gods is to eliminate corruption, demanding he show respect. Sugo watches her outburst with a pained expression, silently regretting that he ever brought up the bride excuse in the first place. Tamaki relentlessly attacks the shrine office's arrogance, criticizing them for forcing exorcism duties onto the Kishin clan while refusing to enter tainted places. The official recoils in disgust at the mention of impurity, his elitist attitude on full display as he faces her wrath. Tamaki mocks their fragility, comparing their fear of impurity to a mere mosquito bite and questioning if they were raised too comfortably. She wonders aloud if her own master was simply stricter, effectively calling the officials soft and incompetent. In a bold final strike, she offers to personally retrain the official if he finds a young lady like her acceptable as a teacher. Sugo stifles a laugh at Tamaki's sweetness being weaponized, while the official looks ready to explode from the humiliation. Sugo smoothly intervenes, apologizing for his wife and claiming she is still learning the ways of social interaction. He lectures the stunned official on the art of debate, explaining that one must always leave an opponent an escape route to save face. His expression darkens into a terrifying glare as he reveals that this calculated mercy is the Kishin clan's way. The officials are thoroughly intimidated, realizing they are outmatched by this terrifying couple and stammering their apologies. Desperate to regain control, the official twists the narrative, shouting that the priestess is being brainwashed by the Oni god tribe. He declares that he will personally inspect the premises and examine the Kishin clan's records to ensure the environment is suitable. As he retreats with his assistant, he threatens to report any misconduct immediately, leaving the trio with a lingering threat of investigation. An unseen observer watches the mansion from the shadows, wondering how long the occupants intend to stay in their hideout. Tamaki realizes the stakes are lethal, noting that if their secret is exposed, the entire clan will be eradicated, while recalling that Ran has been keeping records of her father's case. She reflects on her own naivety, finally grasping how excessively the dragon god's priestess is revered as a sacred figure outside the island. A traumatic memory surfaces of a voice screaming, "Don't touch me," causing her to realize that Ran carries deep, hidden scars just as she does. The scene cuts sharply with a tense sound effect, shifting the focus back to the present moment. Tamaki ties her hair back, affirming to herself that being here and acting as Ran's bride is not a mistake. As she adjusts her sash, she comforts herself with the belief that Ran surely feels the same connection she does. She holds onto the conviction that he will eventually voice those feelings to her. Her resolve is interrupted by a sudden noise, and she turns in surprise to see a figure approaching. She recognizes the visitor as the person from the shrine agency who had greeted her earlier that day. The man enters the room apologetically, and Tamaki struggles to recall his name as he bows before her. Sweat pours down his face as he stammers nervously, struggling to get his words out. He reveals he knows that she and Ran are not officially married yet, a fact he learned from the household gossip. His nervousness shifts to predatory desperation as he realizes he still has a chance to claim her for himself. In a sudden blur of motion, he lunges forward, closing the distance between them to strike. Tamaki screams in terror as the man makes his move. He grabs her, ranting quietly about being a successor who was always branded useless and a failure by his father. Tears stream down his face as he delusions that possessing the dragon priestess will finally force his father to accept him. His sanity fractures completely as he screams that no one will ever make a fool of him again. Ran appears instantly, condemning the guest's shamelessness for coveting his wife and realizing this man was the one guarding the gate. With the threat neutralized, Ran turns his attention to Tamaki, asking if she is unharmed. Ran encases the attacker's head in a sphere of water to silence him, calmly remarking that it is only natural for a wife to protect her honor. He offers a small, satisfied smile as he deals with the intruder. Turning to Tamaki, he praises her as a strong and dependable wife, asking what more he could possibly ask for. He reveals he used this incident to blackmail the shrine agency into letting him investigate freely, though Tamaki is just glad she could be of help. His expression turns serious as he holds her hand, declaring that this will be the last time she ever takes on such a dangerous role. He reminds her that she is something entrusted to him specifically by Akihiro. Looking her intensely in the eyes, he vows that he will not let a single scratch befall her. Ran turns and walks away, leaving Tamaki standing alone in the room. Left in the silence, Tamaki's heart sinks as she wonders if she is merely a burden to be protected rather than a true partner. Shiho bursts into the room with morning energy, demanding the foolish clan leader wake up immediately from his slumber. Ranjiro sleeps peacefully on Tamaki's lap while Shiho fumes at the sight of their intimate positioning. A simple breakfast is prepared, setting a calm scene before the chaos of the morning fully unfolds. Ranjiro casually eats a rice ball, dismissing the previous night's strangulation incident as unavoidable. Shiho scolds them both, blaming Tamaki for meditating in such a spot and Ranjiro for rolling onto her. Tamaki insists this is mental training to keep her heart steady, though Shiho points out she didn't have to endure being a pillow. Blushing, Tamaki asks if Ranjiro needs another explanation, but he simply asks what she needs today. Tamaki hesitantly admits that she just wanted to experience having breakfast with everyone for a change. She reveals the loneliness she has carried, noting she hasn't shared a meal like this since her father disappeared. A gentle smile softens Ranjiro's face as he listens to her vulnerable confession. He assures her that her desire for connection is more than enough reason to be there. Shiho interrupts the moment, bluntly asking Tamaki if she doesn't view Ranjiro as a man at all. Tamaki looks confused by the question, while Shiho explains that a normal girl would be flustered by the physical contact. Ranjiro notes that Tamaki's life has been solely dedicated to training, leaving her clueless about romance. Shiho presses further, suggesting that perhaps there is someone from her past that she cannot forget. The question strikes a chord, causing Tamaki to freeze as a shadow of memory crosses her face. Her face suddenly flushes bright red, and she stammers a denial about being sick despite her obvious distress. Tamaki claims her immunity is ironclad from training in the sea, refusing to admit any weakness. Her body betrays her willpower, and she collapses forward, overcome by the heat rising within her. Ranjiro catches her fall, his expression shifting instantly from amusement to sharp concern. He confirms she has a high fever, realizing her invincible facade has finally crumbled. The group realizes she has been pushing herself to the limit on nightly missions, and Shiho is scolded for being too loud. Tamaki rests deeply, her exhaustion catching up to her after pushing past her limits for too long. Sugo notes that she likely didn't even realize her own fatigue, blinded by her intense focus on duty. In her fevered dream, Tamaki sees a vision of the past, regretting that she was so close to finishing her task. Ranjiro watches over her with guilt, frustrated that despite his vow to protect her, she has fallen ill. He gently touches her forehead, his usual playfulness replaced by a solemn vow of care. Tamaki tosses in her sleep, her mind trapped in a feverish nightmare of memories she can't escape. A comforting hand from her past pats her head, praising her for always doing her best against fate. Her father's back turns to her as he commands her to simply grow up and live, walking away into the light. Terror seizes her as she watches him leave, screaming desperately for him not to be taken away. She wakes with a start, her hand reaching out into empty air as the nightmare fades into reality. Tears stream down her face as the pain of the loss hits her afresh in the quiet of the sick room. Footsteps rush toward the room as her cry alerts the household to her distress. Ranjiro enters, apologizing for the interruption but revealing that an urgent mission request has arrived. Tamaki tries to force herself up to fight, but Ranjiro orders her to stay in bed, claiming he now has an excuse to skip work too. He sits beside her, declaring that for now, it will just be the two of them in the quiet room. Tamaki apologizes for her weakness, confused and ashamed that she has fallen sick at such a critical time. Ranjiro places a fresh towel on her head, telling her that to him, this collapse seemed inevitable. He looks at her with deep sorrow, explaining that she never caught a cold before simply because she was never allowed to be weak. Ran wrings out a wet towel for the feverish Tamaki while the narrative reflects on her solitary struggle for survival on the island. He observes that she hid her pain like a wounded beast, knowing that showing weakness meant being devoured in such a harsh environment. Tamaki realizes that her sudden collapse happened because her subconscious finally recognized this place as safe enough to let her guard down. Ran looks down at her and bluntly states that she is still just a child. He lectures her for being an arrogant brat who never learned to rely on others because her only method of protection was solitary survival. With a gentle yet firm expression, he advises her to accept this reality and take it as a valuable lesson. Lying in bed, Tamaki bitterly remarks that calling her a beast and a brat is quite a way to describe her. She turns her face away, admitting she has no response to his harsh but accurate assessment. Ran breaks the tension with a laugh, offering to peel an apple or make porridge as practice for her to learn how to ask for things. He places a hand on her head, promising to grant any request, which leaves Tamaki flushed and hesitant. Tamaki stuns him by quietly asking him to pat her head, causing Ran to freeze in confusion. He questions her request since she hates head pats, to which she admits she dislikes them but was influenced by a dream. She reveals that she just dreamt of her father, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Tamaki recalls how her father used to pat her head frequently, a memory stirred by her feverish sleep. Ran accepts the role of standing in for Akihiro and awkwardly agrees to do his best to comfort her. As he strokes her hair, Tamaki notes that his hand feels bigger and bonier than her father's did. She begins to suspect the dream was actually a memory of the day her father disappeared, yet finds comfort in the warmth of Ran's hand. Ran asks what happened, and she describes how her father was playing with her until something suddenly pulled him away. She recalls seeing long, thin, black shapes that resembled evil spirits swarming around him. The memory turns dark as she describes him falling into a black sea and being swallowed up instantly. Overcome with emotion, Tamaki breaks down, apologizing repeatedly as she loses control of her tears. Tears stream from her eyes as she cries out for her father, unable to suppress the grief any longer. She covers her face in shame, sobbing that she cannot stop, while Ran watches her unravel. Ran places a comforting hand on her head, telling her it is fine to cry since she has been holding it in without realizing. He urges her to let it all out, staying by her side as she weeps openly. Tamaki cries until exhaustion while Ran holds her close, ensuring no one else witnesses her in such a vulnerable state. Recovered and back in her formal attire, Tamaki bows deeply to apologize for the trouble she caused. Ran casually drinks his tea, teasing that her quiet, docile behavior while sick was quite refreshing. He hands her a hair ribbon, explaining that Shiho left it with him after changing her clothes. Tamaki stares at the ribbon in shock as Ran explains Shiho forgot to return it earlier. She clutches the ribbon to her chest, thanking him with a look of profound relief and gratitude. Ran probes further, recalling she once mentioned it was a gift and asks who gave it to her. Seeing her hesitation, he teases her, asking if it is from someone she cannot tell him about. Tamaki looks at him with a complicated expression and admits that yes, it is someone she might not be able to tell her husband about. Ran stares at her, his expression unreadable as the weight of her words hangs in the air. A flashback reveals a young hand gripping the ribbon, making a solemn promise. The memory shows a young boy holding a mask, promising to come for her on her 16th birthday. Young Tamaki listens in shock as he commands her to survive until then. The boy, revealed to be a young Ran, holds out the ribbon and declares he has decided to make her his bride.